Well, hello again, guys, from here on the streets of Gosforth, where it's a little bit windy, but I think we'll just about get away with it. And yeah, Eddie Howe's press conference this morning, part of that got a little bit gusty as well, and that's because there was some big topics to get through. And straight in, my colleague and friend Matthew Raisbeck threw him a question about the booing of his substitutions, namely Sandro Tonali the last two matches. When he's came off around the 65, 66 minute mark, the supporters have responded by letting their feelings be known. And I think Eddie was expecting this question, and he certainly had something to say, and I know because I've just transcribed it and it took me the best part of 10 minutes to transcribe. Eddie is usually far more clipped than that, but it was an important answer, one which is going to form the basis of my video reflections this morning. Should supporters be booing substitutions? Why are they booing? Where is Sandro Tonali at? That was a follow-up question I asked, and it was one I asked down at Stamford Bridge as well. I'll marry those two answers together and give you an idea of where I think Tonali is at and where I think Eddie thinks Tonali is at. But first of all, what did he say? And like I say, it was a long answer. Well, the top line from it, and this is what I'm going to write for Mail Sport today, is that he has called for the booing to stop. Eddie doesn't think it's helpful for the player coming onto the pitch, which on Sunday was Sean Longstaff. He said, while it shouldn't really affect performance, it does plant that seed of doubt. And I would go along with that. I think, Sean Longstaff being a Geordie and being in tune with the Toon Army, a foreign player might run at the pitch, for example, and be sort of oblivious to the noise and exactly what it means. But I think when Longstaff does come on, he is aware that his introduction, coupled with Tonali coming off, that is the source of the support angst. Now, by way of justifying the change and talking in particular about Tonali here, Eddie said that, well, he's chasing a game and it comes back to goals and a need to have to maximise that threat in terms of scoring a goal or creating a goal on the pitch. I think he was speaking specifically with regards who would come off from that midfield. Now, Sandro Tonali, since his opening game against Aston Villa, his debut, hasn't scored a goal for Newcastle. He's never created a goal for Newcastle. And in terms of do Newcastle win when he's in the starting 11, he's only won one game in the 9 he started, and that was his debut against Aston Villa. So if Eddie is making a change based on the numbers and the data there available, well, to bring off Sandro Tonali, it's not a massive stretch really, but I always say, look beyond that, look beyond the numbers. And I've always used this phrase, just believe your eyes. And this is where the debate element of it comes into it. Now, I don't think taking off Sandro Tonali is massively controversial. And at that point in the game, in the isolation of that performance and where those matches, the last two were heading, taking off Tonali, I think it's been perfectly justified. If I'd have been a fan in the stands, I wouldn't have booed it, not on account of just wanting to support the team. I wouldn't have booed it because I didn't think it was a massively outlandish decision from the manager. And yes, you can argue that Tonali needs the minutes in his legs, and the longer he stays on, the better he will get. I would go along with that argument, but when you're chasing a result, you can't be affording to make decisions based on what a player might need for the week after or the week after that. And as we saw down at Everton, when Tonali came off and Longstaff came on, Newcastle improved. They looked better with Sean Longstaff on the pitch. Now, I wouldn't say that is the answer going forward. I'm not advocating here Tonali out, Longstaff in from the start, but I certainly think within games there is some justification and merit and logic to the changes Eddie Howe is making. And I think it comes back to as well, managers don't make substitutions, players make substitutions ultimately. And I always say this to, if any of my boys are complaining about not being in the starting 11 or coming off here or there, and I say, managers don't make those decisions, you do. Ultimately players make themselves unsubstitutable was the word I used when I asked Eddie Howe on Sunday about this, and that came back to today, that topic was explored. And I said, what does more from Sandro look like? He said, well, it's goals and it's that threat, and if you're playing the number 8 position, there is a responsibility to break from the line, from that midfield, and have more of a danger in and around the final third. And at the moment, Tonali just isn't doing that. That's not to say he is not playing well or he's playing terribly. We've been over this, but there's got to be more to come. That cannot be what we're seeing there. That is not enough to justify for me the booing and to justify, yes, he starts every week, isn't he wonderful? It can't be. Newcastle didn't pay the money and weren't convinced of the difference he could make to the team to take them to the next level based on what we've seen in the last few matches. I'm sorry, that's just not the case. Now, my video from Stamford Bridge on Sunday was all about Newcastle's midfield, and there was a hell of a lot of questions asked on that subject this morning, and Eddie, again, seemed well prepared, and he had, he knew that was a topic and a point of debate out there. I don't know if you watched the video, but if he did, he certainly gave a robust defence and said that no, for him, the midfield is working. Is it working perfectly? Well, no, it's not. He said results would back that up. But he repeatedly referred to the 3 starters as 3 outstanding players. And yes, they are. You know, I was doing videos 2-3 weeks ago in my copy at Mail Sport as well, saying that going forward, this was on the back of that sticky start of the season in terms of performances, going forward, just play your best 3 midfielders, Joe Linton, Bruno and Tonali, and see where they're going. I still would go with that. I wouldn't necessarily abandon that, but that doesn't mean we can't look at their performances and say that the midfield is an issue. For me, listen, Eddie doesn't think so. Like I say, he was strong in that today, and he said these relationships take time, and it sounds as if that trio in there, he believes that they can work together, they will get better, but it might just need a little bit of time. And certainly, he spoke about positioning. There's 1 or 2 little positional issues there that they've got to work on. Okay, yeah, you know, I trust Eddie. I dare say the majority of you guys trust Eddie. I'm not going to row back at that and say he's wrong, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. In part because right now, guys, I don't think there's any other options there. Joe Willock, I don't think looks capable of starting games and seeing through games at the moment. That's a hell of a shame, and that is because of injury. Sean Longstaff, well, yeah, if you're going off ability and what a player could potentially bring and potentially do, you probably would start with the other 3 ahead of him. And after that, you've got Louis Miley, who was just feeling his way back in, and Elliot Anderson is gone. So there's not a great deal more Eddie can do. I would still stick with those 3, but like I said, I don't think they're necessarily clicking at the moment. I do think it is an issue for the team because I think they've got no real goal threat to help those in front of them. And in terms of what they're doing for the guys behind them, do they really have that aggression and that energy and that want to press relentlessly to protect Dan Burn and Fabian Schär? Do have an obvious lack of pace? I'm not sure they do. The ball at times on Sunday was being played through them and around them, and they didn't have that resistance there. Are they nice players? I think Bruno's form has improved. Does Tonali have nice moments? Well, yeah, he does. But again, in response to my question, Eddie said Tonali has got to have more influence on the game. And for the skill set he has to be existing in those moments, it's just not enough. You're a midfielder. Do you then have to do something in terms of changing position? Does he want to be in the middle? Does he want to be on the left? I don't know. But for me, right now, that is one Eddie has got to solve. And I think you solve it by keeping him in the team, by the way, but not doing the substitutions. I don't think that is right. Listen, if Tonali has had a wonderful 60 minutes, 70 minutes like he did against Aston Villa, or that performance against Nottingham Forest when he's absolutely bossing things and he looks like that gladiator we spoke about, yeah, boo the substitution, but not based on what he's doing so far. Not for me. Now, I had to come indoors, guys. It was getting a little bit too windy out there, and as one viewer commented a couple of weeks ago, does that comb over have a flight plan? Which I did enjoy. Yeah, I thought that was very good. But no, here we are, and to continue, I thought something what Eddie said was really telling today. This is when he was talking about him believing that the midfield is functioning, if not at its very best. He said, by extension, there's a little concern that confidence is starting to become a little bit of an issue. And when you've gone 5 without a win, you've fallen to 12th in the table. Well, yeah, it's going to be, and you can see that on Sunday. You could certainly see that the week before against Brighton when Newcastle played wonderful for 35 minutes, concede 1 goal. Doesn't mean you've then got to lose the game, but after that, the performance wasn't the same, and that probably does come back to confidence and belief. And going into this game, we haven't even mentioned the game tomorrow, going into the game tomorrow against Chelsea, my question to Eddie was, is it season defining? Now, Eddie laughed and said, well, you can call it what you want. I think season defining was probably a stretch, but I will go with season shaping, given that if Newcastle are out of the Carabao Cup come tomorrow night, and it looks increasingly difficult for them to get back into the Champions League, okay, that 7th spot will probably always be alive for them, 7th or 6th, but beyond that, there's the FA Cup, of course, to come, but that's a couple of months down the line. I do think to keep the Carabao Cup alive maintains that momentum and that interest and that excitement and feel good amongst the squad, amongst the supporter base, and amongst us guys as well in terms of the narrative and the tone of our coverage. So to that end, I think given time, tomorrow night could prove season defining if they win or lose either way. But I think for now, in terms of what it does for their immediate welfare, it could certainly be season shaping. Now, where are Newcastle at? Where are we at in terms of a prediction? I was pretty gloomy, realistic, honest in terms of going down to Chelsea on Sunday. One supporter on the tube said to me, going to the game, he said, are you going to be nice about us today? I said, well, I don't determine that. The result and the performance and the players determines whether I'm nice or not. And I'm never nice or nasty. I'm just realistic. I always come back to that. I'll stop mentioning that. But tomorrow night, I think they've got much more of a chance. Now, one element, got to mention this, which I think doesn't improve Newcastle's chances, that Anthony Gordon would probably be missing from the starting 11. Now, he's had a scan on his groin. The good news is it's not a serious injury. It sounds like he will feature this week at some point, but Eddie Howe was almost hinting that it might be Arsenal on Saturday before we see him. I certainly wouldn't expect to see him in the starting 11 tomorrow night. You might know more going into tomorrow, but just judging from the language Eddie used. So that would mean Harvey Barnes again starting on the left, and that's okay. That's good, you know. He's a good player. Just come on, do it from the off. Do it over a 70 or 75-minute spell instead of what he's shown himself to be more adept at so far, which is that impact from the bench. But can Newcastle win tomorrow night? Have I got more confidence than I did on Sunday? Yeah, I have, massively. Now, that is because of the realisation and the acceptance, which talks to everything I've just mentioned about the importance and the magnitude of this on Newcastle's season. And when that's the case, it doesn't matter what has gone before. St James's always comes together. It always makes itself that 12th man. The players feed off that. And I think we'll see a huge reaction tomorrow night, just given that reality, that the magnitude of it, the gravitas is absolutely huge. You cannot underestimate that. You cannot understate it. So to that end, I'm going for a big St James's night under the lights. It might take penalties, but I think Newcastle, I'm going to go with this, I think Newcastle will make it through. I don't know if you heard that, but the dog was grumbling there in the background, so he's obviously got reservations about my prediction. But what do you guys think? Tell me below the line. What do you make of Eddie's comments with regards to the booing? Do you boo? Do you not boo? You know, as a general rule. Then in terms of specifically Sandro Tonali, is it right? Is it wrong? What do you think about Sean Longstaff coming on? What would you do if you were sat in the stands? And like I say, what do you make of Eddie's response to that? And also his response to the issue of the midfield debate. All the comments below the line after my video on Sunday felt in general agreement about the tone of it. Eddie seems as if he would leave a different comment. Please do leave a comment, Eddie. You know, that would be wonderful. You know, so where does that leave you? Is Eddie right? Should he persevere with this three? Are they showing signs of promise? I would say they are, but it's just not enough for Newcastle at the moment to be winning matches, given how, I always come back to this, how fundamental that midfield is to the impact on a team at both ends of the park, and ultimately it then leads to the results. So yeah, guys, leave me your thoughts. Hit like, hit subscribe. Again, that subscribe button, massively important for the channel. Yeah, I sound like a proper YouTuber there for once instead of a journalist just wandering around talking about football. Yeah, hit like, hit subscribe. There's a thanks button as well. And I'll see you back from the terraces of St James's tomorrow night, where I'm convinced I'm going to be reflecting on Newcastle United in the quarter-finals of the Carabao Cup. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.